Hey Cubs, Scribbles here, welcome back to the channel. Today we have a very special episode of the Teddy Bear Rescue Squad because we are doing the mascot bear both for the rescue squad and the channel itself. Now for this project I wanted a specific bear. I wanted him to be dark brown because it just seemed like a good idea. However, that proved a little tricky. Local to us there didn't seem to be any dark brown bears whatsoever, so I turned to eBay and I ordered this little one. This is the Gund Philbin Bear. He is 12 inches and he's really cuddly and I love him. However, as time went on I kind of thought, you know what, he's a little bit small for what I have planned. So I turned back to eBay and thought about finding a bigger bear and discovered that he actually comes in a bigger size, which was fantastic because, as I said, I really like him. So there was one listed at 45 centimetres, which was perfect, as whilst my conversion rates aren't the best because I suck at numbers. I did know that 45 centimetres is bigger than 12 inches by a bit, so I ordered him. He turned up and turned out to be exactly the same. Now obviously I wasn't going to send him back because that defeats the whole object of the rescue squad. So now we have these twins, which is great in a way, and I do have a plan for them. But that will be much later in the year. So I still didn't have my mascot bear and I decided I'd turn back to eBay and decided I'd go for a brand new bear. That way there was, you know, I'd get what I wanted. So I did just that and got this guy. He is the 18-inch version of the Gund Philbin Bear and I'm really happy with him because he is so soft, both in his fur, his nose and his muzzle. It's really cuddly, and look, he even gets to be Papa Bear to these two, which is great. It's just a great big cuddle pile really. Yeah, so he gets to be mascot bear, so let's get going. This whole process has been a bit tricky for this video, a lot of learning curves, but to start with I wanted to find all my blue fabric, which actually turned out to be not all that much, and the majority of that was denim. But the reason I wanted to use blue was partly because blue is my absolute favourite colour. I'm more partial to sort of bright electric blues, sort of cerulean blues, those kinds of colours, but I do like any shade. But also because you often find that superheroes use a lot of blue, such as Superman, Spider-Man, Thor and plenty of others. However, the main influence behind the Teddy Bear Rescue Squad is actually International Rescue, otherwise known as the Thunderbirds, and they, like everyone else, have a blue uniform. So yeah, it was just kind of a natural choice to go with blue. Yeah, and giving the Philbin Bear his new identity as Patches was just a really good idea. This was a lot longer process than I'd hoped for, partly because I'd hoped to use the sewing machine that I acquired. However, I had a fight with it and unfortunately the sewing machine won, but that's a story for another time. Here I'm just adding the different patches to his cape that I wanted. Yeah, like I said, it had to all be done by hand in the end, which was a bit of a pain, but it got done. I really wanted to do for this character was to have the thread on his cape stand out. The whole idea behind him is that, you know, he's been patched back together with love, which I know in this instance, being a brand new bear, it kind of doesn't matter, but you know, other bears that are part of the rescue squad will definitely be going through this process, so it just felt right for him as well. Yeah, so I used red, purple, orange, and just a really bright blue. I didn't quite get the colours the right way around that I should have, as far as like matching them to the fabric, but you know, it still works, and yeah, I think it looks good. So being such a long process, I added the other 3 panels of camera, because otherwise this video would be several hours long. After the cape, it was then time to make the mask, because every superhero needs a mask. Now in this case, again, been using denim, and to cut out the eye holes it was a bit of a fiddle, primarily because I forgot about the snips I purchased. You know, I tried using the big fabric scissors I've got, my sharp pointy thing, even a tiny pair of scissors I found that used to belong to my grandfather, but they just don't cut anymore. But eventually I do remember that I've got the snips, which make the job far easier. And then to stop the edges from fraying, I decided I'd treat them like buttonholes and stitch around the entire edge of the eye holes, and again I wanted them to stand out, so I used the orange thread, which also matches because these, like I say, are denim and cut off jeans which already have orange thread in them. It's not identical, but it works well anyway. And the other thing I did was I stitched the edges like buttonholes of the entire mask, and the reason for that was I forgot to give myself enough seam allowance to hem it, which would have been preferable because it would have just looked better, but when I tried to do that, it just lost the whole shape of the mask, so yeah, I decided that was a bad idea. After that, it was time for the heart. Now this heart is quite special in that it is the Rescue Squad's logo, again based on International Rescue's logo, but this time it's a bear paw with a heart rather than a hand and the globe. And the reason is, it's Patches offering a hand, or a paw in this case, of love to neglected and unwanted bears, which is, the whole concept behind the Rescue Squad. And yeah, it just felt right to do, but it would have been weird him himself having his own paw on him, so it just made sense that he just have the heart logo. And again, the patchwork part, just to show, older bears being loved. It was actually a lot harder to do this than I thought it was going to be, because I didn't have any orange fabric, or hardly any. The first piece I tried was some sample fabric from curtains, but that was really a burnt orange, and I really wanted a bright orange to stand out against the bright blue. So yeah, that didn't really work. And then I tried doing just some stitches using the orange thread I've got, doing it that way, but that just looked terrible. So I undid all that, and eventually I found this ribbon, which is not ideal, but it works. And in case you're wondering, best way to stop ribbon from fraying is to melt the edges with a match very carefully. Something I've done several times before, so know what I'm doing. I'm not going to burn down the house, not on this occasion anyway. Once the heart was made, it was on to Patches himself and giving him his makeover. Now this I was a little nervous about doing, purely because of him being a brand new bear, and I never intended on doing this to a brand new bear, but if you were paying attention in the intro, you saw that I didn't have much of a choice. So yeah, first was adding these pale blue patches in his ears, which I really like. It's really soft polar fleece fabric. And the reason I wanted to use different fabrics for this project was one of my favourite plushes is actually Blue from Jurassic World by Posh Paws, and the reason being is she has several different textures on her. So apart from being a raptor, which is really cool anyway, she has all these different textures, which makes her really nice to stroke. Yeah, and I just wanted that for Patches as well. So yeah, he's got this polar fleece here. The heart is made up of felt and the ribbon patch, though that's tiny, so you don't really notice that too much. Then once the heart is attached, it was time to move on to his mohawk. Now this proved tricky, to say the least. I was tempted to leave the square intact, but yeah, it just didn't seem quite right, you know, even being on a diamond angle, just being whole, yeah, I just looked bad. Once I got going with this, yeah, it actually attached quite easily, and again I managed to keep all the long fur out the way so it looks natural to him. Now the styling, that was, part of me wishes I kind of left it how it was, but the way this fur had been cut before I received it meant that it was shedding unbelievably, and I kind of wanted to stop that from happening, so again I turned to Puppet Nerds videos and found this one on hairstyles, and in a minute you will see where everything went terribly wrong. Yeah, I got the wetting it right. However, I didn't have Elmer's glue. That seems to be a recent addition to the UK. It was an American glue, I do believe. Not one I'd heard of actually until I'd started watching YouTube videos. So yeah, I didn't have that, but as far as I could tell, it was basically PVA glue, and I had a bottle of it knocking about. However, what I hadn't realised was just how old the glue was, and it had started to go lumpy, and I don't think that helped it at all. It actually still stinks of glue, and it's just made a bit of a mess, so I will redo it at some point. I need to order some more of the blue fabric before I can do that, but yeah, I'm definitely gonna redo that. And then the final thing I attempted to do was to give Patches some new paw pads, and my original design had leather pads because I have a box of scrap leather and I thought it'd be a great opportunity to use it. However, none of the tools I have to work with leather are actually any good, which is a pain in the bum, but it's just one of those, and not a lot I can do about it. I tried, it just wasn't going to work. It was just causing my hands so much pain, I gave up. What I did do in the end was I found some other fabrics to use, and I just did his little toes. Yeah, and again, it's given him more textures, which are great to fiddle with. Yeah, and I'm really happy with how he came out. So Patches is done, and I'm really happy with how he came out. There we go. He's got his little mask on, which I attached some ribbon at the back just to keep it in place. His mohawk didn't work quite as I wanted. What I did for that was I used Puppet Nerd's tutorial on puppet hairstyles, but unfortunately I didn't have Elmer's glue. I used PVA and it turned out to be old glue at that, so it's not done as well as I would have liked. So I'm going to order some more of this fur and get some Elmer's glue and give it another go. But still, I'm really happy with the way it's kind of how I've managed to stitch it on without it looking foreign, as it were. It is also a bit skew-if, but that's okay. Then in his face we've also added little pale blue patches, and his cape, which I love, which that's all patchworked, which just, hang on, and just undo that with the popper. And then he's got, mask comes off as well, let's take that off. He's got his little heart, which again looks like it's meant to be there, not just stuck on. And then I also did his paw pads. Now I was going to do the big ones as well, but it was just so difficult to do the little ones. Plus I kind of wanted another fabric to do that, and the only other thing I had was leather, and unfortunately I don't have the right tools for using leather. But yeah, overall I'm really happy with how he's come out. Yeah, and it's given me some ideas for the twins, what to do, what not to do. And yeah, that's it for this one. I'll see you cubs in the next one.